I do, he will do also. But greater works than these he will do. So the first doll will do the greater than the other one. The next one will do the greater on the other one, the greater on the other one, greater on the other one. So he set up this whole structure of hierarchy so well, equivalent to the Russian doll. And he said, you should do the next one, should do the bigger one, and the bigger one, and the bigger one. But I haven't seen anyone do bigger one, right? I haven't seen. But my desire is to see someone doing a bigger one, right? So where is the problem? Why were we not able to do the bigger one, right? The issue was with the leadership that we encountered, right? Wherever we were, we encountered leadership that did not facilitate the growth to the next. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Eric. That was awesome. Actually, what you started off earlier with, be kind to yourself. I thought that was a really cool thing. I thought I moved back too far back. Okay, and that was really good because, be kind to yourself is what I was thinking about a month ago and talking to our group, because I realized that when you're not kind to ourselves, what happens is that the salvation gets stuck in our nervous system. Okay, it doesn't touch because a lot of times you are so harsh on yourself and you completely forget your spirit and you try to grab the Holy Spirit, but you forget that you have a spirit as well that works, where God is very kind to. Yeah, so you start feeling condemned and things don't move. I was not going there anyways, but I thought it was a good point to make. Okay, so servant leadership. And it says a workshop on servant leadership. So they got me a little baffled for a bit. Is it a workshop? But I was planning a preach a little differently. But I must say that when Kay spoke of it first, it got me thinking, because when you hear Jesus talk about in Matthew 20:26 to 28, it fits very easy and fits very right, because when he says it's very right, okay? But then, how do you bring it into the world, right? And then that's where it starts becoming challenging. So I couldn't understand for a bit that, okay, we work in corporate environments, we work in industry. So how do you be a slave? How do you serve? How do you be a servant when everyone is like competing to get to the top, right? So that to me, I really had to go really deep to understand what was happening, and so I think this was really important. Like I said, when Kirby places something there and says, okay, you got to speak on that for a while, which he was very insistent that we did, he doesn't do it without thinking. So he knows that if he's placed it, is for us to set the hearts in such a manner so that we can go to the next step. So it's a step to get to the next one, right? And especially so when he's talking about flow and he's talking about various other things like goal setting and passion recipes. So before we get there, this thing is really important. So I think it's good that it's a workshop, right? In that manner, and everyone that has been chosen to speak on that, right, is. I'm very sure, I'm in fact 100% sure they've been touched by God in those aspects so they could speak of their revelation, which will help everyone else, So Philip was amazing as he started very passionately wearing his Prada shirt and Bali boots. He was quite sharp in how he, emotional and passionate. I loved it. He opened the door, And then Raj came in and expanded, right, on that. That was amazing. I like Tash's comment saying Raj is so pastoral when he's speaking. I mean, don't you want to hug Raj when he's speaking, right? He's so smooth, so smooth. He smooths. What do you think, Vero? so he's like that, right? He just keeps flowing. And now I'm waiting for a row, right? And that'll be amazing. and then I think Ezra is going to come back and seal the deal. And I think that'll be really interesting. So yes. So when I started digging deep into this to understand what servant leadership is, so it doesn't stay up on the surface, I realized that it opened a whole new world for me. right? That's what I'm going to share with you, and I'm hoping that it'll touch everyone. Because what I realized is, like Raj, I think briefly mentioned last time, that there's need of leadership even in the country, community. So we are in a place where there's a need for leadership is even more, it's more critical right now. Yeah. So what happens is that when a need like this comes, you understand that there are certain archetypes of leadership and certain cliches that you say. The leaders are in politics and corporate world and sports, right? But you don't realize that leadership doesn't end there, right? But that's where how the world is structured. So you look at it and say, okay, that's where the leaders are, you know. So. My message will not be more than 30 minutes, so just hold on to it, right? As you know, I can't go longer than that. My excitement runs out. So when I was looking at it, I realized that there was a divine intention by God to place leadership right in the structure of our heart. Okay, and I'll take you to Genesis 12. Yeah. And I'll show you that Abraham was exposed to that structure of God right at his first encounter with God. Okay? And if you read this, now I want you to read this scripture in a new light. Okay? You need to read this scripture like a leader is telling a follower. Now let's read. Okay? Now the Lord said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family. It's a leader who's saying, he's saying, I'll lead you. You leave your father's house and I'll lead you. I'll show you and I'll make you a great nation and I'll bless you and I'll bless your name and you'll be a blessing and So it's a leader speaking. You see, it's a leader. There's a structure of a leadership right there. Right? You may say, oh, God spoke, Father spoke, you could have interpretations, but I'm saying, look at it as a leader. Isn't that a leader's word? So the structure was placed and the tone was set at that time when when Abraham first had the encounter. Right? Everything that a leader needs is in this passage. Right? This 12:1, everything that a leader needs is there. So he set the tone for the leadership to start there. Right? It's very important because, well, he did the same. Adam also had the same opportunities. Before life was breathed into Adam, the word had already been constructed around him so that he could lead. He could be the leader. So all the right words were used: dominion, right? Subdue, a helper is being given, right? It's just that we don't look at it like a leadership because we have created archetypes of leaders, right? So, but Adam relinquished leadership a little early, right? So he couldn't go on to be, what he could have done. Hence, I have to slow down a bit because I may run out early. Okay, hence, right? There remains a place, because of these, right? There remains a place deep in our psyche or our consciousness or our heart, right? A little soft place which needs a leader, which needs to be led. A soft little place. If I ask you, all of you would have these encounters when you were a kid, when you were growing up. There's someone when you saw someone, you said, I wish I could be led by that person. I wish I found someone who could sit with me, right? That little place, I want you to reach that place again. That little place is the most precious place to realize your fullest potential. That place is vulnerable. That place seeks. That place aspires. That place is soft, right? And that place, if a leader touches that place, he will propel you like a rocket to your fullest potential. Right? That place, right? And that place is the very tiny place in your heart where a wrong leader can corrupt and erode the entire environment of growth. That place. Okay? And that place is what I'm talking about. That place is what Kay has been emphasizing for a while, and that place is what we're trying to bring to everyone, because your heart could be put in the right place and your fullest potential could be reached. Right? That place. You know that people talk about hero worship. Hero worship comes from that tiny place, because you don't worship a hero. You don't worship a hero, right? There's no such thing as hero worshipping. But that space in your heart looks for this. Let's look at sports as an example. For a kid growing up, a kid looks at this big sportsman and he says, I want to be like that. So in that hero worship, a kid or someone growing up is looking at his fullest potential right in front of him as a mirror. That is what's happening. When a kid looks at a thing at that point, he says, that could be me. So he's looking at his fullest potential, right? And okay, as age passes by, some people, their hero worship becomes a little numb and it dims, right? And if you ask some of those people who've got a little dim and numb, okay, right? That's my excitement, right? So if you find someone there, right, and you ask them, hey, what happened? They will give you reasons and excuses why they couldn't make it. I wish I had a good coach. I wish I had a manager. I wish I had this thing. Basically what they're saying is, I wish I had a good leader. I wish I had a good leadership environment. I wish there was someone who could take me to the next level. Right? So, yes, there remains that place. Right? And that's why we're emphasizing on this a lot is, that's what Kay says, right? Even if you come now, you could start. Nothing is lost. Because the structure is such. Yeah? And you see, all our lives, right? From the time we were small to the other, we were passed from one leader to the other leader, to the other leader, to the other leader, till we became adults. And then we were passing on. If I ask you, at one point, you did not make it, at some point, what was missing? A good leadership was missing at that point, that you could not take the next step forward. So leaders are not just corporate leaders, political leaders, this leaders. We as adults or as humans, we go through leadership, passed on from one leader to the next leader to the next leader. That's why when we come to WOW now, right, we have found the leader, right, who takes us, he takes us to the next place, right? So that's, and that place, which Kay emphasizes on a lot, that place is the one that got Abraham to leave his father's house. That place is the one that got Noah to prepare and plan the ark, right? And take all these animals or everyone with him and got them to start new lives. That place is what I'm talking about, right? And that place is still alive in yours. So your fullest potential is right here. But you have never looked at it. Right? Okay, so I also found out while I was dwelling it and the whole world opened for me, I realized that how invested God is in leadership. Right? He's so invested in leadership. So, do you realize that from Abraham all the way to Moses, he did not allow anyone to lead the person that he was trying to make it into a leader? Till Moses. After Moses, he got Joshua involved and he said, okay, Moses, now you train Joshua to be the next leader. But before that, it was only him, 100% training them to be leaders. Right? He brings Joshua in because then if you understand the whole how the story shifts, is when you realize that now leadership could be passed down in a certain system, but he still remains involved in that system just to maintain the integrity of the model he was creating. Yeah? So, and when I was understanding this whole thing, I realized that how he invests in relationships at that time, right? So that the bigger purpose of his promise to Abraham could be fulfilled. Right? He needed Moses to get the people out of Egypt because he promised. And the next leader had to do bigger than what he did and take them into promised land. Why? Because the promise that was made. So he's constantly looking for leaders to take you towards your promises. Right? Because it's a promise that he's made. And now he will work as per that promise all the time. But if we don't break our shells and relook at the structure of leaders around, right, you may be missing a trick. Right? So that's why I could for the first time I understood shepherding. Shepherding is such a big deal for God. It's such a big deal that obviously the entire New Testament structure is based on sheep, shepherds, sheepfold. I mean, Jesus has, how many ways, how many places he says and give parables on being the sheep and the sheepfold and the shepherd, right? And I realized it was a big thing because when he called Moses to his real purpose, Moses was a prince, right? But he gets him down. So let's go to Exodus 2:17. That's really so interesting to understand how we got that. You see, then the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. You see, this is when he met his wife around the well. So he was creating an environment for Moses to be in a shepherd kind of environment. He was getting Moses to stand up, right, when other shepherds are not doing the right thing. And his famous encounter, Exodus 3:1, please. His famous encounter, he meets Moses as a shepherd, not as a prince. Right? So you see, he was leading, he was a shepherd going up, and he goes up and goes to the mountain of God, and then he has that encounter. Right? So here he was trying to, so God, okay, you were a prince, but you need to shed all that, and I have to get you into the shepherd environment so I could tell you how to shepherd my people. Right? So shepherding was such a big deal, right? And I realized how this whole thing now continued. And I used to just think, just sheep, shepherds, and I couldn't understand why they talk about sheep and shepherds all the time, right? But there was such a structure, right? That was being created, and he was invested in that. That's the word you'll hear me speak a few times tonight. And then what happens is this okay? Because it's going like I'm trying to take it like a workshop, right? But I'm trying to also open some things in that manner, yeah. So, but I have like 30 minutes to do it. That's my own time on me. Okay. Now this is the crazy part, right? When I was understanding leadership, I'll bring it back to WOW. Okay, just go with me on this journey. I'll bring it back. If you understand this structure, like I say that when I'm tired, I come to this area and your environment on Tuesdays and Sundays. I don't care who the speaker is, but I come because I know that when I have open hearts and everyone's vibration frequency, my things have already shifted, right? Because it's a perfect place for God to do miracles, right? So if you come saying that you're coming for your Father's kingdom, and I come here saying I'm preaching my Father's kingdom, right? God's going to do miracles, right? So just because you're here, you're hearing this. Okay, you're here and you're hearing this, okay, that's good enough, yeah, because you're going to the next level, yeah? So now what happens is, for the first time, God, okay, let's go to Numbers 27. God identifies Joshua, okay, for Moses, and he tells him, are we there? 27:18. Numbers 27:18. Okay, it says, he talks about, he's telling Moses, right? God was telling Moses, take Joshua the son of Nun with you, a man whom is, with the man whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, right? He starts identifying Moses, and if you go, Joshua, and you go to 22 down there, 22, it says, so Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and he laid his hand on him and inaugurated him as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, right? Now this is the first time you see in a scripture that God introduces a second leader, but he works through Moses and gets Joshua as the leader. Okay? And I realized that that's really interesting. How come it's like now God becomes the third element? Right? So God becomes the third element so he can facilitate the spirit of leadership being passed from Moses to Joshua. Right? And so why? Because he needs a second leader who can deliver a bigger promise. So now I need to be on the side and get them to do this while I stay in the equation. Right? Now this to me was such an eye-opener because it brought me to this thing, right? Now this is This is how many years at WOW? 12 years, okay? In 12 years in WOW, I've realized that every time I've crossed a milestone, Kirby's had a dream either a week before, a day before, or on the same day, and he's called me to say, this is how it's going to happen. I heard, are you planning? I said, yes. And I realized God's doing exactly the same thing. He tells him, shows me so I can walk in, right? So here's my leader who's unlocking a leadership in me, but I'm in fashion and design, right? But here's a leader who's unlocking a leadership in something else. And God's showing him to show me so I can walk. There's the same structure that he's invested in. The structure still continues now if we understand. Yeah? And this was really interesting. So this, I thought, how come now suddenly God has become the side on the side, playing on the side? He does the same thing with Elijah and Elisha as well. So he gets Elijah, and then Elisha does a bigger role of what Elijah was doing. There was double portion, right? There he was facilitating a spirit of prophetic duties. Right here it was leadership, right? To lead people into a thing. So something really interesting is if you go to Deuteronomy 31:7, you'll see that, are we there? Deuteronomy 31:7. Okay, so if you read this scripture, you'll see there are certain words. Be strong and of good courage, for you must go with this people to the land which Lord has sworn to your fathers to give them. You shall inherit. He says all those words, right? Now this is who? This is Moses prophesying over Joshua. Yes? So now, just think of the scenario. Moses tells Joshua, this is what you're going to do. This is what's going to happen. Okay? Now let's go to Joshua 1:6. Yeah, I'm shutting down quicker because there's no excitement. Okay, Joshua 1:6, right? Now this is God talking to Joshua directly. Okay? Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide the inheritance, and says all those things. But that's strange. Moses speaks this thing to Joshua to go into your prophetic fulfillment. You're going to go and do that. But when God encounters Joshua, he says the same thing what Moses told him. So this whole thing works. That's how I got reminded of Kirby's thing. That he speaks like this and he moves. There's such a cool element of third. Right? He keeps working around in that manner. Right? And then I realized that God's work through Moses yielded all the fruit in Joshua. God's work through Moses yielded all the fruit in Joshua. Okay? God's work in K yields all the fruit in me. God's work in K yields all the fruit in me. And same in you. Right? So this is how leadership works, right? One prepares the next. And the next is submitted to the first. Right? So, really interesting. Let's go to Exodus 3:5. Is this okay? Yeah. Sandesh, I'm not going too fast, right? You'll tell me later that you finished it too soon. Now's the chance to tell me to slow down. Okay, Exodus 3:5. He says, do not draw near this place. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Okay? So God's telling Moses that. Let's go to Joshua 5:15. Okay, there's 15. Okay, the commander of the Lord army said to Joshua, take your sandal off your. I thought there's something wrong, feet and foot, right? And I checked King James as well. It was foot, but there he says feet, but he says foot. Okay. That got me a little like it's a strange thing. So he told him to take only one. Yeah. And I researched this to understand why was like they were working in tandem together. So why was this a difference? Like why was it like what was going on there? And I realized that in my research, right? You should do that as well. I found out that it says that shoes symbolize human involvement, okay, in the world. Shoes, that's what they symbolize, right? And when God was leading Moses, it was just him leading him totally. So he got him to take both the shoes off. But Joshua maintained a prophetic relationship with Moses so he was asked to take one off. So he maintains a prophetic relationship with Moses. Right? And I thought that was stunning. That was stunning. So God was playing the role of the third on the side. Right? And work, don't leave Moses because he's given the word, but I'll be here, you take one, but the whole thing. Right? And I thought that was just stunning, how that was structured. So that's why God is so invested in leadership. Right? And that's why Case speaks about leadership all the time. Right? And yeah, so I'm just slowing it down by taking gaps in between, nothing else. Okay. Because last time Ezra told me that someone was coming to watch what I was saying. By the time he got there, it had finished. So he said, how long did you speak? I said, like 20 minutes or 15 minutes? No, it was half an hour. I know it was half. He said, guy started there and he got here, it was finished. So that must be like super fast. So, okay, so let's look at a typical world corporate structure, not a corporate structure, the typical world leadership structure, which the world romanticizes, right? This is my understanding of the corporate leadership structure, the Russian dolls, okay? And I always, if you look at it, this is okay as a hierarchy, right? But in terms of growth, your leader is on the left. Okay, and then this one behind and one below, all the way. Hierarchy is fine, but in terms of growth, everywhere the growth happens like that. The one on top grows the most, number two grows second, and goes down and down and down and down. Right? And this is what everyone is comfortable living with, and everyone lives with this. Yeah? But when I was looking at servant leadership model, I started looking at it again, and I said, there's something wrong in the model, right? And I realized that what we were trying to say all this time was that in this scenario, in servant leadership, not this, go back to the other one. So that's where our leader is, or that's where the leaders are, on the extreme right. And the next one is the one who needs to grow more than you. That's like Moses, Joshua. That is like Elijah, Elisha, right? And the next one, the duty of the next one is to make the other one grow further bigger. And the duty of the next one is to make the other one grow further. And then the one further, then the one further, right? And I realized, looking at it, and I was thinking, that way we could be a community of giants. Because everyone else is growing more, and it's your duty to push them to the next one. Because that place in the heart that a guy had, saying someone could lead me, that's what you can propel the person into. Right? So while I was dwelling on this for a while, okay, I was just looking at what are the structures that people look at for leadership, right? And I realized post the pandemic, empathy became the biggest thing for leadership. Empathy, right? And empathy, why? Because empathy was considered, before the pandemic, empathy was considered as a soft skill. Right? It's good to have, but it doesn't drive performance. But post the pandemic, the whole thing shifted. It became the most critical skill because from innovation to performance to retention was completely driven by empathy. Right? Why empathy? Because empathy created, the research and found out empathy created trust, it created communication, it created community, and it created mental wellness. So what happens is empathy became the most important one. And I realized, how is it possible that suddenly there's one leader I have, all he has is empathy. Right? Like when I meet Kirby, here's a man who's completely overflowing with empathy, right? And I realized that, wow, this thing was wow, because it's wow, and it's there, right? And then so while this whole thing was going on, I was dwelling in this whole thing, I came across this thing, and if you get a chance, read this, called The Age of Empathy. Okay, I only came across like 10 days ago this thing called Age of Empathy, right? And I found this model, which I'll share it with you now. This actually is a Russian doll model. I was about to say my Russian dolls, but they're not my Russian dolls, but you know what I mean? The Russian doll model. You see the one in the middle is a Russian doll, okay? The one on top, so the one in the middle is the one that does they call it the motor mimicry. Just 2 words. Don't worry about the other words. Motor mimicry and emotional contagion. Okay. Now what happens is motor mimicry is the vision is mimicked by the one who's the next one. Okay. And emotional contagion is all the visions, the ideas, the thought processes are multiplied to the next one, and the one after that the next one. Okay. So in Age of Empathy, they talk about it's a book. They talk about that this is the current model of growth for any leadership organization. If you are at the bottom, if your core is the strongest at the bottom, right, the next one will grow bigger, and the next one will grow bigger. So in our case, the leadership structures are such at WOW that the core is strong, and from there it goes to the next, then goes to the next, right? And, well, in absence of a strong core, I thought of a few leaders' examples to give. Then I thought I won't take religious leaders' examples, but I thought I'll take the corporate leaders only, and I'll take global, right? And you know, we all know Harvey Weinstein's thing, right? Yeah, Harvey Weinstein's thing. Harvey Weinstein, right? Harvey Weinstein's thing of like for so long he was like the boss of Hollywood. Right? He was the boss of the hall. I mean, he's given breaks to so many actors and actresses you can't even think of. I mean, he had the opportunity to create the most amazing leaders in Hollywood. But what does he do? He slaved them into their openings. Right? He slaved them into their openings, into their breaks. And even, so then obviously Me Too movement started. But those guys, the little space in the heart they gave him, he completely eroded that. Why? Because his base, which I showed earlier, his base was hollow. So the leadership crashed in 2 or 3 years' time. Or 4 or 5 years, right? Then I came across this guy called Carlos Ghosn. I don't know if you heard of Carlos Ghosn, but he's a guy who was a superstar CEO of Nissan and Renault. Together on Netflix, there's a new documentary on that guy now, right? He was doing so extremely well, he became greedy. He wanted to run both the companies together, right? He had a leader who actually told him how he should go up. When he decides he's going to run both the companies because he's so successful, he stopped listening to the leader. He didn't even invite him for even the company things. So then in 3 years, he crashed because the base was hollow. The base became hollow. And then what happens is I think he's the guy who escaped from Japan in a music box thing, right? Because he was caught there, right? So now they're leaders, like there's Nokia, the leadership at Nokia, the leadership at Kodak, right? So I thought it'll be safe to talk only the corporate leaders, right? But you can easily bring it to others as well, yeah? And I'll have some water. Thanks. Is it going too fast? Is it going too fast? Mm-hmm. Is this okay? Yeah? Looking at the Russian doll structure, I then said, okay, let's look at John 14:12. Okay. John 14:12, right? I thought, here is Jesus setting the structure for the New Testament. And you see this reflected also in the Russian dolls, right? It says, that I do, he will do also, right? But greater works than these he will do. So the first doll will do the greater than the other one. The next one will do the greater on the other one, the greater on the other one, greater on the other one, right? So he set up this whole structure of hierarchy so well, is equivalent to the Russian doll, right? And he said, you should do the next one, should do the bigger one, and the bigger one, and the bigger one. But I haven't seen anyone do bigger one, right? I haven't seen. But my desire is to see someone doing a bigger one, right? So where is the problem? Why were we not able to do the bigger one? Right? The issue was with the leadership that we encountered. Wherever we were. Right? Wherever we were. We encountered leadership that did not facilitate the growth to the next. Right? And this is the first time this whole year I have hope, right, with how the word is going here, that we could create the bigger one, right? Because how the community is being structured, how the leadership is structured, how the word is presented, right? How we're doing things, how Kirby is leading it all the way in such a manner, right? First time I saw, okay, we could do bigger things, right? And we could be the example for the community, for the country, for the city, and do the bigger ones, okay? Okay, so I have come to the end of my message. So I'm going to leave this with this thought, okay? That can we do the bigger ones? Right? You need to be committed to the leadership so that the leadership could bring the bigger ones out of you. Yeah?